Okay, we'll get started then with our work meeting and apologize for coming in late, but we had important business to attend to. And I'd like to begin by telling the board that it was this time last year that we reviewed our board goal. And we have 7 goals that we established for this year. I'd like you to look them over for next week so that we can discuss them a little further. If there's anything for each regular meeting, I've been reading one of the goals aloud. And I especially wanted to return to the one about doing something with this building. And I know that we took the vote, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Truba, but we did not have a majority, nor did we follow the architect's plan.
Correct.
And the reason that I bring that up is because we have a meeting scheduled with the town on Monday. And myself, Ms. Parlamas, Mr. McCarthy from the Legislative Committee, we're meeting with the mayor and several of his staff members. And there's been some discussion between the Board of Ed and the town, of course, about shared services, but they are interested in having further discussion about how we might also have a new building and they might have a new building. And their municipal offices are in need of repair, just as this building is. So I'd like to be able to go into that discussion along with my legislative committee members with an open mind as to, well, maybe we can work together to get something to benefit both the town and this building. To say we're going to do nothing, I think, is irresponsible. We've already had one of our board members have an injury and a fall. And we know that just leaving things status quo is probably not the way to go for this building. If you didn't like the options that our architect presented, we need to have some further discussion. So if you would look over the board goals for our next meeting and bring any questions and concerns, that's something that I think we should discuss further. So far, we're on task. Our other goals: determine and vote on a strategy for the existing building. Again, that was our first one. Second, hire a superintendent with a target date of July 1st. I know that non-conflicted members are on task for that. Support and continue strategies and student-centered programs to close learning gaps. I know our summer programs are up and running and soon to be fully staffed, we hope. Support initiatives for student and staff SEL and mental health. And of course, our wellness committee is very involved with that. Support programs focused on personnel retainment, which is kind of hard to do when you're under budgetary constraints, but I hope that we can retain our staff members, which, by the way, there was a legislative approval to restore funds to our district. And Ms. Truba is awaiting the final word. I know that the governor was signing that bill, and we're very grateful for those funds being restored. But I think we have to account for how we're going to use them. Ms. Truba, is that correct?
Basically, it was like
$32,000. Yes.
And what we told the county office is that we are not going to use it for ongoing expenditures. We're going to use it for educational supplies, and it'll be a one-time cost that we will be using for the 23-24 budget. So, you know, the big concern, some districts got back a lot of aid.
Yes, they did.
And they want to make sure that if they're putting that in, that they have a way going forward to be able to operationalize that expense going into, you know, years going forward.
Sure, it has to be sustained.
We don't have that situation.
Well, with $32,000, I'm sure we can.
Exactly. And helps.
Thank you. Support strategies and practices in hiring diverse teachers and administrators by encouraging direct contact with colleges, universities, and other diverse professional organizations. And finally, support improvements and technology related to our security district-wide. So those were our proposed goals for this school year. And again, if there are any questions, concerns, but again, we have a meeting on the 17th with the legislative committee and the town. And hopefully we can discuss some possibilities going forward. Who knows what we can accomplish? Mrs. Hayes.
So that was my question. Will it be before the next meeting? So will you have like a full wrap up on the 18th of what you guys talked about?
I certainly will take notes. I don't envision us having, come to any solid conclusions,
yeah.
but we are just going to throw some ideas out, which is very interesting. And by the way, the meeting that was scheduled on the 18th with our assembly women has been canceled. So we'll have to reschedule that at a later time. But I know that we do get legislative updates regularly from them in the form of emails. So we'll see what we're going to do with that. Any other questions or concerns? If you have something to say about our board goals, or you have a question about how they could be clarified, you'll bring that to next week's meeting. All right, we will begin then with our superintendent's report.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make the board aware, if you remember back in the fall, all of our schools conducted security audits through the State Department of Education. We submitted those. We've been requesting a visitation from the department. And lo and behold, on the third day, we finally got our date. So they're coming on Thursday, the Office of School Preparedness and Emergency Planning. They'll be visiting the high school, the middle school, and the roadside elementary school. We're going to conduct a drill at the high school, probably a lockdown drill, which I just announced to everyone. That's okay, it's a drill. And this is all going to be in conjunction with the prosecutor's office in Monmouth County and also our local OTPD. So we're excited about that. And I'll do next week's meeting. I'll give a report on that. I've asked our district security team liaisons, Mr. Palamas and Mr. McCarthy, to join us for part of that meeting or all of it if they can make it. So we're 8:30. We started 8:30 at the high school. So we've both told me we can't get out of it now. You told me you're coming. So we look forward to that. We'll get an update next week at the next meeting.
Good. Thank you. I'm glad we have our liaisons there.
The thing to mention is also today, just regarding security, the governor had an initiative to provide digital mapping for our districts. And, we put in last October for that. We submitted our schematics for our buildings. We were finally, after 6 months, contacted for a break. And today, the folks from the company is doing a walkthrough with Mr. Pemberton, our head of security, to make sure that was moving forward. So that initiative of getting digital mapping for all of our buildings is moving forward.
Good.
And hopefully we'll be in place for next school year.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Hayes, you have a question?
The security office audit, I mean, the thing that where they do an assessment of how we handle things, like it's the free thing that not every school gets. This is the one you're talking about.
Well, the audits are a series. It's basically it's a survey that it's a self-survey. So every principal went through with their team security people. Thank you. You could just say, you can move that up.
One that we say, come to us and tell us how we're doing. Is it that one?
What we submitted, and then they'll come, they review how we do certain things, but they'll also give us some feedback on the survey that we submitted. Anything wrong that they saw.
And it's voluntary, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, the audit is mandatory. It's now something every school has to do. Actually, the law was passed about 3 years ago, but with COVID and everything else, they haven't really gotten too crazy with it. But this year without my understanding, they expected all districts to comply with it. We submitted in December, and so now they're coming out and giving that.
Okay.
Hopefully, giving us that feedback. Okay.
Good. Thank you very much, Ms. Trubuth.
In terms of the BA report, I just want to remind the board that the New Jersey School Board Conference is going to be this October. Monday, the 23rd is when you come in, and October 26th is when you would leave. So it's a 3-night conference. And what I do need is by next week, if the board members can let me know if they are going to attend, and then what potential nights, because I need to reserve the rooms.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
So if we did like, if we tell you Tuesday, Wednesday, but you'll be able to cancel one of those nights as it gets closer.
So I have till the middle of September to do it, but what happens is the rooms go right away.
Yes.
So they literally announced last week that everything's open, and I'm basically gonna book a group rate because we do have central office staff that goes, and I do know a lot of the board members like to go, but it's in terms of what nights do you want to stay? Because I'm gonna try to get us in a good location.
And thank you. And there's incentive for applying early. correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder that our final budget meeting will not be held on April 25th, but rather on May 2nd, correct?
Correct. County office needs more time to review the files.
Okay. As long as I approve it. Thank you. All right, let's move to our first public comment session. All motions are posted on the district website. At this point in the meeting, we will now conduct the first of two public comment sessions. The first session will be open for public comments on agenda items only. The second session will be at the end of the meeting and can be on any topic. Ms. Conley, would anyone like to comment on the agenda? We don't have anyone in the auditorium today.
And we have no commenters virtually either, Madam President.
Thank you very much. All right, let's move to our action items, the approval of minutes. Mr. McCarthy?
Move to approve items 7.1 and 7.2. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who that was. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, take the roll. All in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right, financial management and resource services, Mr. Tays.
I'm pulling it up. 8.1, move to reapprove the acceptance of the school climate change pilot grant in the amount of $6,600 to support locally focused climate awareness initiatives. Oh, I don't have to read any of these. Do I have to read any of them? 8.2, move to, hold on. Move to approve the use of facilities as per the attached memo. Those are the two motions, right? So do I have a motion?
You have a second, your motion. On the second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So do you want me to take the vote first and then if there's
And
any
then
discussion?
continue with the
Okay,
discussion
not a
items.
problem.
Yeah.
And I had a question.
Do you want to, on either of these?
Yes, on the use of facilities.
Okay.
Hold on, it's pulling up. And I think I asked this last year, but it just seems like there's more dates. So can you explain the district receives $10 for these dates for the baseball, and then student activity accounts receive 75. So, and then what happens with that student activity account money?
That helps them pay for uniforms, any equipment that they might need. So that's how we break that out. That's been our agreement with the baseball. So then what we do is we save the dates for them first, but if anybody else comes in and we need to do reprioritization, that's something that's handled by the facilities group.
So the $3,500, for example, for the first one on the left, that includes the $10 and the 75, like that's the addition of all that?
Yes,
And who's paying? Is Ocean Baseball?
yes, USA. Yep,
Oh, it's Ocean Baseball USA.
correct.
It's typically USABL. That's the league.
That's the
USABL
formal
is like
word.
it's the
The
Parent company.
parent, right.
So it has nothing to do with our high school baseball team.
our baseball team runs tournaments that we've been doing this for years. So what
Yeah.
happens is USABL is basically the insurance for the tournaments.
Mhm.
It's a nationwide company. Ocean Baseball is running these tournaments, meaning running the fields, getting the fields ready, buying the dirt, like whatever.
They help those kids, right? So the team members go as facilitators, they help out.
They do community service to run these tournaments. And then in the deal that we made years ago was that when it's a fundraiser for their team,
Mhm.
that we would take the $10 so that we would be able to cover like the fertilizer or whatever. And then the
Mhm.
75 would go to the team so that since they're the ones actually running the tournament.
And if it's baseball and wrestling, do they split that money in half?
Yeah, same coach, so he splits it.
And then what was my next question?
What?
Yeah.
not exactly sure why it goes to the wrestling team, but.
Well,
okay,
same coach, because he's the one who
I
ran.
understand, but it's a baseball thing.
But don't the wrestlers run it too? His wrestlers come and run the event as well, I believe, is what, how it used to be at least. I assume.
Your question, Ms. Hayes?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if it's split equally.
Okay. And
So that the answer is yes, between the,
Yes.
it is split, the money raised is split between baseball and wrestling teams. And what do they use that money for?
Like when they go to states and we don't have to pay the full value, like we always have wrestlers go down to Atlantic City.
But wouldn't we pay for that anyway? I'm just trying to gauge or understand if this is they're raising money for stuff that we should be paying. Like, are they buying new uniforms with it? Because I think that should be us paying, not
Probably not.
a fundraiser. Are they buying new equipment? Or if they're going to a hotel for a tournament, isn't that something we should be paying for? Anyways,
Not if we could save the taxpayer money.
Yeah, we never have before.
It doesn't hurt us
Yeah.
to do this. This is a good event for the community, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, and it's
And so
been,
then we find a way to add money to the taxpayer. Why not?
right, it's been done forever.
well, being done forever.
And by the way, this
Doesn't mean anything.
I mean, I know we've all been saying we want to have a facilities,
Mhm.
committee meeting, and it's definitely overdue because I want to be able to show the audit that we've done, what we're doing with ESIP programs. I know people wanted to look at the fees, so we definitely have to do that. But right now, this is what we've been charging, and this is how the breakout has been.
Thank you.
And we're still on track to meet maybe this week with with this committee for the facilities.
I haven't heard anything from anybody, so if you want to let me know when,
We'll
I
talk
guess.
right at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Is that good? We just talk right. at the
Are we
end?
talking finance or?
It's me, you
Facilities?
and Natalie need to have, me,
But I'm
you and
not,
Natalie.
I'm not planning construction anymore.
No, it was,
No,
it
it's
was
finance.
finance and I was, on finance, and when we changed committees, we said that the three of us would finish the conversation.
Got it. Okay.
Because otherwise.
Yeah, there's a couple of open items,
All right, we can
correct?
circle after and figure out. Okay.
All right, can we finish the other financial matters?
Well, we have to vote on those.
Okay, so can I take the vote now?
Yes.
We're good? Ms. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Ms. Palanis.
Yes.
Ms. Telerico is absent, Ms. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilman,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you.
Wait, you don't have to recuse?
No.
You
Oh.
facilities?
Baseball.
Isn't the baseball your son-in-law? Okay,
So you want to recuse yourself on the
Just from
I
the,
like it on
non-problem?
problem. Okay, just checking.
just checking.
Yes, just checking. Turned out to be right. Okay. 8.3. Board of Education Administration will discuss the non-public textbook purchasing services between Township of Ocean Board of Education and Monmouth Ocean Education Services Committee from July 1st until June 30th of 2023 to 2024 as per the attached. 8.4, Board of Ed will discuss the non-public technology services agreement between the Board of Ed and MOESC between July 1st and June 24th of the same time period per attached. 8.5, Board of Ed will discuss the non-public security aid contract between the Township of Ocean Board of Ed and MOESC from the date of adoption by the board until June 30th, 2025, as per the attached. 8.6, Board of Ed will discuss the agreement with MOESC to provide non-public nursing services from the date of adoption through June 30th in accordance with the attached. And 8.7, Board of Ed will discuss the agreement with Monmouth Ocean Educational Services Commission to provide non-public instructional services under chapters 192, 193 from the date of adoption through June 30th, 2026 in accordance with the attached.
So these are
Any
all
questions?
standard contracts that we work with MOESC. They handle all our non-public purchasing payment, and then they bill us in return, and then we send them an invoice.
Thank you.
Okay. Standard every year,
Right. Contracts come up every year.
correct?
Instruction, education and student activities, Mrs. Beal.
Move to approve 9.1 through 9.3, discuss 9.4 through 9.6.
Second.
Okay, so we're gonna take the vote first. Okay, Ms. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Ms. Palanis.
Yes.
Ms. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Gilman?
Yes, and for Mr. Bosman, young Mr. Bosman, if you are on, I don't know if you remember this, but I think if you're going to Las Vegas, you're supposed to take the board president too. Just saying. Thank you very much. Personnel.
Okay, is there any discussion though on the 9.4 through 9 point,
9.
I'm sorry, I'm missing, yes, 9.4 and 9.
Oh, the instructional council. I was going to give that, I can give that now. I was going to give it later. Right, so the instructional council, the last meeting was held on March 15th. And our last one will be held on May 17th. If you'd like a copy of the notes, please email Dr. Stefankowitz. Most of the questions and concerns came from the high school and the intermediate school. There was clarification needed to any changes for the special ed programs for next year. Concerns were raised regarding declassification, limiting the number of resource classes, moving students from resource to ICR. How will we ensure the students impacted will have the best interest prioritized? And the response was that there is no initiative within the district to cut special ed programs solely on budget. Students are only classified if there's data to support their eligibility. If the data demonstrates the child is no longer eligible, the child will be declassified, and it's based on the data, not on budgets. And case managers are always advocating for students and individual needs. Students will get what they need based on their IEP. When child study teams meet to determine students' IEP, it's based on the data for the individual student. Student eligibility is based on special ed code. And an individual student's IEP is required to place a student in the least restrictive environment. It's not accurate that it's based on budgetary concerns. The next concern was class size. With the reduction of staff, it follows class sizes would increase. However, if we are being told class sizes will not increase, is it possible to find out how class sizes differ from electives compared to core classes? Response: in light of budgetary constraints for 23-24, class sizes in some areas will increase, but not dramatically. In some cases, on the elementary level, it's still fairly low compared to the rest of the district and county. The OT district overall enrollment continues to drop, about 80 students per year as a loss for the district. Currently, secondary school class sizes average in the mid-20s or a little higher in some cases, with those being the exception. Electives in gym are generally larger than English, math, science. It's not atypical that electives have higher class size. Next question was in high school, multiple classes in one block. OTHS guidance response. Guidance is still in the process of collecting student requests and should have a better idea about request tallies after spring break. If a situation occurs when the need to combine classes is necessary, the administration will notify the teacher as soon as possible. As the master schedule is built in Genesis, guidance will look to re-prioritize the singleton electives. Additional professional development will be added to the June PD day. It's important to contact the SIP panel to ensure the appropriate development is prioritized for that day. Question about Genesis. There have been many Genesis questions raised since September. Most are waiting to see if Genesis can accommodate our requests or need consensus from parties before implementation. Can those questions be finalized, agreed upon prior to the June PD day? To date, administration was not aware of many issues or concerns outstanding, with the exception of one issue, which arose within the last 2 weeks. Administration's perception is that most Genesis questions have been answered by the principals or building tech department. With that said, Mrs. Weldon will gather information from principals and building techs to identify Genesis questions and concerns still outstanding. There may be confusion between answers provided previously, which teachers don't like to hear, versus issues that are truly outstanding. The issues seem to be more at the upper levels, as the elementary schools are still exploring Genesis. The goal is to gather as much information as possible for a productive PD day in June. Question: IEP modifications. Can a student's IEP modification page PDF be attached in Genesis, similar to how 504s are attached currently? The current process to view a student's IEP modification page is extremely cumbersome and time-consuming through the Genesis Frontline link. Is the IEP modification page really any different from a 504 for student privacy and teacher viewing? And response: for legal reasons, teachers are required to read the entire IEP for a student. Therefore, posting just the modifications in Genesis is concerning that the teachers would just read the modification and not the entire IEP. However, since all special ed personnel have access to the IEP Direct and can print from there, they were unaware that Gen Ed teachers have a read-only option. Further investigation will take place to see how Gen Ed teachers can get a copy of the modification page, either printed from the IEP Direct or have the modification page loaded to Genesis, similar to 504s, yet ensuring that they've read the entire IEP. Hopefully, this can occur by fall of 2023. If a teacher needs a copy of the modification accommodation page and they cannot print it from Genesis, please ask a case manager or one of the child study team secretaries, and they will print it. Question: leveling. There are concerns about leveling of students and if this is going to change. If there are leveling changes coming, what would they be? When would they be implemented? Response: there's no imminent change or consideration to eliminate leveling. Intermediate school. IEP annual review form. Teachers are supposed to be given a Google Doc to complete for upcoming annual reviews. This is in place of putting the information into IEP directly. However, sometimes the form is sent, sometimes it is not. When the form is not sent, the teachers have been asked to put the information directly into IEP Direct with little notice. The teachers would like consistency. Currently, we are not following one clear practice for narratives on IEPs. This is causing confusion and in some cases missed deadlines. Special ed teachers would like to go back to one consistent input across the board. Is it possible to have one consistent process? Response: currently, one consistent method procedure is in place. Child study team is supposed to send out the form in a timely fashion for teachers' input for the form. Ms. Hanson will investigate any discrepancies in procedure not being followed and take the necessary corrective action. Question: Genesis feedback. Staff members would like to see feedback on the Genesis lesson planner compared to the Google Doc lessons we implemented last school year. Many find their lesson plans were more organized and detailed with Google Doc. Can a Google form sent out about Genesis lesson planner to see how the teachers like using it and if they find it effective in writing their lesson plans? Response: Ms. Weldon welcomes the feedback and will discuss with the supervisors what are the advantages to Genesis to have all the information in one place, including lesson plans. In general, lesson plans should be stripped down to the basic needs. Lesson plans in Genesis should be as simple as possible with emphasis on the reflection of student learning. And again, there was nothing submitted by the elementary schools, nothing to report. If you'd like a copy of the minutes, please email Dr. Stefekowitz. So that was the instructional council update. Any questions and concerns? Yes.
Not about the instructional council. What's the calendar reference? The update just said reference for the Board of Ed.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it.
Oh, okay.
So, it didn't snow. But we did have an electrical outage at one school this year. So we have the ability to move up graduation one day in order to make sure that everybody gets 180 days in, as by law. So we can move to the 20th. However, there's a board meeting scheduled that night. So I did want to ask the board if you would be able or willing to move that meeting up to the 13th, where we don't have a meeting. If not, then, we'll probably pick another day. We'll keep graduation where it is, and because I don't think anybody's going to want to come to a board meeting after graduation. I don't anticipate that. But
We did this last year, right?
I believe we did do it this last year. Yes,
It's the same.
we moved the meeting up a week.
Yeah.
So I want to get it. We have this opportunity. Normally, we will take day off at the end of the year. Once again, the reason it can't be two is because Bell Avenue did use one day, and so unfortunately, we had we can only give one back.
Ms. McGovern?
I know that we did this last year and I'm okay with moving it up a date, moving the meeting. And I know last year I made this comment that we were gonna be putting it on, you know, it would be a week later. But nobody would come to the 27th. Nobody wants to come that late. However, we then don't have a meeting the following Tuesday because it will be July 4th. So that would be 1, 2, 3, I guess it's 3 weeks without a meeting. So
Which happened last
The exact same conversation took place last year, if I remember.
Same.
I believe the exact same thing happened, because we typically do the second and fourth week in July.
Mhm.
That's what I'm asking. I mean, if the board's okay with me to the 13th, and we would we would meet the 6th and the 13th, and then we would graduate on the 20th.
Right.
Okay.
Mrs. Hayes?
I have another proposal. It's been brought up before, being that it is a state and federal holiday for Juneteenth. What are the thoughts on giving June 16th off? I realize it's towards the end of the year, but this is a state holiday.
Right.
There's been many arguments for this. And if we are trying to make our school as, you know, fully cognizant and worldly and all the other things I can't even think of to say, you know, perhaps it is due time that we recognize Juneteenth.
Is that final exam?
Well, exams are going on, yeah. We discussed it. We discussed it administratively, discussed it with the association. The consensus, without question, was to take the day off the end of the year first and foremost, if we could do that. After that, we did talk about other possibilities. We talked about Friday before Memorial Day. We also talked about June 16th as the recognized day for Juneteenth. The consensus absolutely was end of the year first, if we could do that. The next thought was the idea of the 4-day weekend around Memorial Day. And then, you know, if not that, then, you know, we could certainly go the idea of the 16th, but that was kind of third in the list of.
And the union voted again, like,
We had a conversation and they talked about it amongst their leadership and, you know, they definitely, you know, the first thing is to try to get out early. That's always the first thing. Then both administratively and the association then said, if not that, then, you know, the idea of the 4-day weekend around Memorial Day would be more attractive.
Any thoughts and
I think
conclusions?
what I'd like to do is take it off the end of the year is what we.
As we did last year. Mr. McCarthy, you have
Are you gonna be okay with being cheated out of a meeting then? Board meeting?
No
I
meeting,
think you might not
no sheet.
come back. It's like 3 weeks without seeing us. He's out. Stand up.
That's 3 weeks out of seeing me, so. just-
You okay with that?
can we go over what the proposal, what the meetings were then again?
June 13th.
I think we're scheduled for June 20th. We'll just move it to move that meeting to the 13th of June.
And there was one the
I
6th,
think there's only one scheduled on the 6th.
so it's the 6th, the 13th, and then when are the next?
I believe it's July 11th, I think.
Granted, that's usually the week. The argument last year was that that's the week. The week before 4th of July is typically when people take off anyway. So there's not that there's not work being done, but that.
Yeah, well, most of the people have vacation days too, so that's.
They have to use by July 1st. So that's
Right. It's up to the board. We can, you know, if you guys are willing, traditionally, we just take it off on the year. That's what we've done.
So can we vote on that?
Well, I mean, if you give me a consensus, then I will do it. I can put the revised calendar on next week for.
Right, I think people are anxious because I've received emails.
Yeah, we gotta make sure we have to book the things too. We have to make sure is that the sound system, the golf carts, everything else could accommodate on the 20th, which they can.
Okay,
That's our sound system person told us the 20th is a better date.
is a better date.
So, rather than the 21st, I mean, so.
So, Ms. Truba, then can we take a vote as to removing the last day, moving graduation of the day?
No, just, are you okay?
Is there that it's so discuss it never.
I don't like the meetings, having no meetings for a month, so I don't like that, but.
But is there a consensus?
Yes.
That's why we'll just take a vote, yes?
That's my.
Anybody not in favor? Ms. Hayes, you're not in
I'm
favor?
not in favor, no.
Okay,
Okay.
consensus is then to
Yeah.
take it off at the end of the year.
So we'll take off the revised calendar, be on next week. You can vote, but it's also the case that that's going to start getting out that it'll move and, you know, which is what we have now. I mean, of course. We do these tornado alley all of a sudden, so, you know, I mean, it's all subject to potentially change. We, you know, perhaps we should worry more about tornadoes than snow these days, but,
True.
you know, I mean, we're assuming that there will be no other emergency need for emergency usage. But as long as there isn't, then we'll go with the 20th and we'll go from there.
The 20th will be the graduation day.
Yeah, the 20th for graduation. Thank you. Personnel,
We did personnel.
yes.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to move items 10.1 through 10.8. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Ruba?
Thank you. Ms. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
Yes,
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Ms. Palamas.
Yes.
Ms. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman,
Yes,
motion carries.
thank you very much. Let's move to policy. Since Ms. Tellerico is not here, I know Dr.
So
Savek,
we'll just address it.
yes, just as
So this came up, this is not a new, this is, we are initiating this. We're putting this forward. For many years, we in our district have not, and it goes back many years, and I don't really know all of the motivations. We have not accepted students, exchange students from other countries here on, we just haven't accepted them. And I don't know if there was a bad experience many years ago or what it was. But there's two types of visas that would allow this to happen. One is an F1 visa, one is a J1 visa. The F1 visa basically allows anyone to come for educational purposes, but they can do it on their own. It's not through an agency. It's, you know, we're not suggesting maybe that we change. A few months ago, we got an inquiry about the exchange student. Obviously, during COVID, we wouldn't consider some of those things, but right now we're kind of thinking, you know, this could be a bit of positive experience for not only the student coming, but, you know, culturally for the students that get to meet the student and what have you, right? Sharing the cultures. So the J1 visa goes through an agency. You know, that places kids. So it's more organized, it's better structured. So what we're suggesting is that we change our policy to allow students to come via J1. They have to actually, you know, they get a host family, they live with that family, they adhere to all of the rules and regulations of the school district, you know, all those things. If they're here as a senior, they wouldn't get a diploma. I think it's in there, what we're proposing, the regulations and everything. But they wouldn't get a diploma, but you know, they can still take part in some of the festivities and things. So you know, we're suggesting that we change our policy to allow foreign exchange students that come through agencies and, you know.
Is the host family in Ocean
Oh,
Town?
they would have to be in Ocean Township, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it limits to how many we could have at one time. Like, it's
Okay.
very specific. We called around all the school districts who do it and kind of got their rules and how they apply it, and we kind of put it all together. I think it would be a good thing.
It was a very enriching thing. I acted as a host family for an exchange student from France, and it was very interesting. But because it was an agency, they also had activities planned for the students so that they weren't in school every single day. But they did take part in many of the activities that we had in the
You know,
district.
sometimes we take them to New York City. we
Yes.
Take them here, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would ask the board to consider changing the policy to allow for that type of exchange.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. White.
Where did you get the wording from? Did you get it from our,
We were getting inquiries from agencies.
no, where did you get the wording?
We called around other districts.
Okay,
And the wording is more of what's the changes in the regulation, not, you know, the changes in the policy is just now accepting J1. It's the regular, I believe it was put in the regulation, not the policy.
okay.
Is that accurate? I believe that's the case.
Applicant students, yeah.
Where it talks about the different
Mhm.
criteria.
Mrs. Hayes.
this is an unusually long policy for us, so I apologize. I didn't read every word. What part, I'm reading all about like parents moved and all that kind of stuff. So where does it mention?
It's only the only part of it that changed is, I think it's crossed out or it's red or it's whatever,
Yes, it's in red.
it's the part about exchange students.
So far about
Page 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
I realize that is the addition, I guess, and why we're bringing this up. But twice this year, we have basically promised that we will be having policies in place to verify the address of our, academy students that go. So, and I feel like that should be in here, and possibly it is. But I see parent or guardian, but it doesn't say custodial parent. And I think we might want to consider adding the words custodial to some of this 9-page policy, because it might apply in several places. And will this policy serve as for that purpose, so that we will be verifying addresses of those 80 students that we spend $700,000 a year to go to academies?
Yeah, I believe the policy covers that. The issue is not as much about policy as just in a procedure to check on those students. We check on in-district students, every so many years. I think, we just have to follow up for those students. And I don't know that has to be spelled out. And I think this policy covers, you have, to be part of, to be part of the school, you have to live in the school district. I think part of it is being able to, obviously when a student is going to vocational school, if they move, it's different, it's different in terms of us being aware because they're not physically here. And vocational school will say, well, it's your responsibility to do that.
Yeah.
So, our plan is to moving forward is to require that usually we do it every 2 years, not every year, but every 2 years to follow up and make sure that people submit proof of residency, just like we do for our own students, when I said the students who remain.
So shouldn't that be in this policy?
So we revised it February 2022.
Well, I'll go back and take a look at it to see if there's.
But I think since that time, there was
a particular policy that would apply, or perhaps that's more within the regulation itself. I'll go back and look at it.
Okay, because I think we tasked ourselves with, by the end of this year, we would have something in writing that said, we're going to start following up with addresses or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll vote on this at our next.
Yeah, this is, as long as the board is comfortable with the idea of having
Exchange.
it's new, it's different. from
Do
what
we
we've
know?
had.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Do we know if the family that inquired about this if the student they were inquiring about had an F1 or a J1 visa?
I believe they have the J1.
The J1.
Yeah. And it is coming through an agent.
Right.
It's through an agency that we were contacted. So.
I think I was contacted this year about it early in the
You
year.
want to take on another?
I don't know. I was contacted. So
Okay.
it was interesting. All right.
Then you get to go live in France for a while? or-
No, it didn't work that way. Unfortunately.
All right, we'll take a look at the.
Thank you. Let's move to old business. Yes, Mr. McCarthy.
I thought this was going to be in the agenda, so I apologize for not calling out sooner,
Yes.
but the legislative committee
I thought it would be on the.
sent out to everybody.
That's my fault. I assumed it was going to be, but when you sent it to Ms. Truba. So yes, we do need that in place. I know that you wrote the policy and the wording.
Everyone should have received a copy of it. I don't know.
Yes.
I did send it out to everybody.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
So is there any, just to give like a broad overview, right? So we technically our policy, states that the president could create a committee without the support of the board, so it's the district policy 0155 says that the president or a majority of the board may create any committee like this, right? So, but I'm hoping that maybe potentially today, today that we can vote on and approve the creation of this ad hoc committee that has been sent out for review. And just a couple of highlights, if you didn't see it in reviewing and reading it, very clearly states that all members of the committee are to act in a nonpartisan manner. They are not to take any action on behalf of the board, but instead to act in an advisory capacity to the board on meetings and to report out to them. And it also actually requires some announcements. It stipulates like when things need to be announced to the board, and whether it can be announced virtually due to an emergency requirement, say that, you know, someone calls or requests a meeting on a shorter fuse. But it asks that it's announced at a meeting prior to, at a board meeting prior to meeting with a county or state official on behalf of the board. So basically it's saying that in every capable opportunity, please announce it at the meeting prior. If not, make clear to the board virtually that you will be conducting such meeting. So those are just some things I wanted to highlight and see if we could, as a board, agree or recommend modifications.
Yes, Ms. McGovern.
When you say that, like, to set up meetings, for example, like what you were just speaking of, that would be the legislative committee setting up a meeting to meet with somebody, not just a board member going and saying, I want to go meet.
Correct. Yeah, the committee meeting. And then if there's any requests from like a town or county or state official, we look for 48 hours of notice for two reasons. Number one, just to kind of have that gap in time there, but also to give an opportunity for any members of the board to, because we're acting in a nonpartisan capacity, to share their opinions or questions about certain issues that they would like brought up at the meeting that can then be shared again at the next regular meeting.
Yes.
The only thing that I think everything sounds great. The only thing I would say is, like, even with the meeting that's happening next week, for example, like you brought up talking about with the town, this building and stuff.
Mhm.
I would say within that instance, or in an instance that maybe you're talking about security or whatever, that maybe going to that meeting, luckily, for what I'm suggesting, Ms. Parlamas and Mr. McCarthy are both going to be there, and they are both on planning and construction. I would just
Security
suggest,
liaisons.
you know, well, I'm talking about the town meeting.
Oh, okay.
You know, so you're both on planning construction as well. I would just suggest that we make sure that when these meetings happen, that there's also, if there's a plan of action of maybe site visits or anything like that happens, that there's a conversation back to the planning committee, or there's a conversation back
Absolutely.
to security.
I
You know,
don't think we're
even
gonna get that
separate.
far.
But I'm just saying, but even separate from the whole committee, sometimes when we come here to make reports, you know, I don't need to know every single detail that happened at that meeting, but I would like to know the details that happen around planning and construction that concern something that I'm the chair of. So I would just say in any of these meetings, whoever chairs whatever other committee that it kind of touches, if there's somebody, you know, that is there, great, that's on that committee, maybe not, like if it had to do with finance and maybe Ms. Hayes should be at that particular one because we're talking finance, or if it has to do with instruction, I don't know that it would, with Ms. Beal, with that, you know, or just make sure somebody that's on that committee is sitting there as well. That would be my only.
Or they can give input. If we
Towards what
report
needs to be.
toward what needs to be covered, so that the legislative committee would attend and bring your concerns about planning and construction or finance or whatever. That's what the
Correct.
committee's for.
Yeah, so.
Yes, that's the purpose of the notification
Right.
of meetings, is
So,
so that you can get anything that you would like brought up prior to that meeting.
right.
And then the final paragraph states that meeting minutes will be reported by a committee member or the chair of the committee, which I don't think we even appointed, but whatever, and then reported at the following board meeting,
That's right. So we'll
I think
take
that's
notes
great.
and report back.
just to maintain transparency.
Thank you. Mrs. Hayes?
I love the idea of this legislative committee, so I think it's fantastic that we're doing this. Does this mean that anytime we're to meet with any local official, whether it's like town council, the town manager, even local senate and all that, like nobody who's not on that committee will ever have a chance to sit in? Because I think several of us mentioned like, oh, we want to, take turns sit when you guys talk to the council or something like that. So is this?
I don't think that it means that. I also think, we even were just talking before this meeting started that, we had the meeting on the 17th is going to be at 11:30, and Irene was like, do you think you're going to be able to make it? I said, I think I'm going to be able to make it work. And I think it's highly possible, that there's going to be situations where members of the committee are not all able to
Right.
attend. And that opens up a spot that we can then yield to another member of the board and say, hey, does anyone else think that they can attend?
Agreed.
But then that'll be the only time that somebody else.
I don't think it has to. And I think that that's open for discussion with the board prior to. So, hey, this meeting's being announced. We're putting it in writing about this, that we have to state when a meeting is upcoming and solicit what we would like discussed. And I think that as a board, if the conversation comes up that we really want to discuss what's going on with this property, for example, well, then we need members of the planning and construction committee to be there and be present for that conversation.
Or to give their input.
Right.
I mean, it's like the planning and construction, if you have a meeting, planning and construction, and I raise my hand and say, I'd really like to go to planning and construction. You know, do I sit in on the meeting with planning and construction that you go to with an architect, or do you report back to the board? That's why you're a committee. Instead of hopping around with everybody, you know, you go this week, or you go that week, and you go next time. That's why we have a committee. But if I have concerns about this building and you're having a meeting with the architects, I'll tell you my concerns, and then you'll bring them to the meeting.
This is all
But if
true.
there's a time when someone from the legislative committee can't make a meeting that we have scheduled, and we would give plenty of notice so that, you know, unless there's an emergency meeting, but I don't anticipate that.
But I don't know, that this doesn't smell, was it pass the smell test to me?
That's the sniff test.
Because we clearly stated at several meetings that we didn't like, I think this was when maybe even when Jeff was the president, you know, just Jeff and Dr. Stankowitz meeting with the mayor, we wanted to spread it out.
That's
And
why we formed the committee.
I get it. And I also know who's on the committee and who isn't. It seems a little, once again, purposeful to not have certain voices at the table. Because before we brought it to everyone's attention, well, that's not really fair to only have one person always meeting with council. Then we all agree, well, let's take turns. Who wants to go? Some of you guys didn't even want to go. I think some of you raised your hands I don't even need to go. It doesn't matter to me. But there were others of us that not everybody's going to want to go to a PR committee. Not everyone's going to want to meet with our architects, but we're talking our school architects versus local government. I just think that there's a little difference. And it sounds like,
I think that
we're all
I think that this
being
is a massive
exclusionary.
improvement on the previous issue, and everybody is welcome to their opinion. And I know that there seems to be this opinion that there's people out to get or prevent certain people from being present at certain meetings, having their voices heard. I think that this is a massive improvement on that because we're now sort of codifying that there needs to be a clear announcement of meetings and who they're going to be with, and to solicit the opportunity for individuals to provide their opinions, and that we are going to remain nonpartisan in this meeting. And I think that this is serving to respond to what has been brought up previously. Whether who the president of the board appoints to those committees, that's the president's job. That's what they do. Now, I'm not saying that, I respect the appointments that have been put forward. And next year, when there's a new president, they're going to appoint new members to that committee if we choose to continue its existence. I think that they're doing a better job in the creation of this, of avoiding the issues that you're bringing up, Alex.
Ms. Tortorella.
I was John started to say it, but I think because we rotate year over year, I don't have an issue with, I'm not on every committee that I might want to be on. So I think it's just something we deal with as we rotate committees. It's already April. We have 8 months left, and then there'll be new committees. So I
stand by my statements, and I think it's
So do we
obvious.
want to vote on the legislative committee? Would be nice to go into next Monday's meeting with the committee in place.
I'll make a motion to vote affirmatively on that.
second.
Who seconded that?
Ms. Tortorella seconded.
So vote on the legislative committee as was sent out in the document
Yes,
that,
in the document that everybody received.
Ms. Beal,
Yes.
Ms. Hayes,
yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. McGovern,
Yes.
Ms. Perlanis.
Yes.
Ms. Tellerico, I'm sorry, not Ms. Tortorella,
Yes.
Mr. Weinstein.
Yes.
Ms. Gilman.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Well done, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
We'll move to new business.
I'm sorry, I had some old business questions.
All right.
I have a couple here. You said to come with questions, so I have a couple, and I'm going to save some for the next time, so we're not here forever. Last year at the Wanamassa Talent Show, unfortunately, a kid, fell off the stage and broke their arm. And you know, we didn't even know about it. I think that just fingers, you didn't even know about it. Because I brought it up at the meeting and we said we were going to require the PTAs to have a nurse's key and then a first aid kit. So they're having their upcoming talent show on the 28th. I think it's will probably be awesome as it always is. But where do we stand on this requirement? Because I think with last year, they couldn't get into the nurse's office. They didn't know what to do, how to get a Band-Aid. They're at the high school. When they're in a foreign space, you know, they need access to that. So where do we stand on that? That's one question.
Yeah, I'll talk to the principals. I mean, we can make sure that, you know, certainly a first aid kit is available to them. And if there's anything more than that, then, you know, obviously there's always a custodian there that should be able to get them in to an office. But I mean, obviously, depending on, you know,
I think they have to find a custodian and, you know, it's a big building.
well, depending on, you know, depending on what the situation is, we shouldn't be, if there's a serious situation, they should be calling 911. Right. So we can certainly make sure that there are things like Band-Aids and things like that available, but we, you know, have to be careful about it. I mean, you know, if there's an emergency, you do what you got to do. Right. But, you know, you got to be careful about non-medical staff administering medical care, you know, so I'll talk with the principals. Make sure we have a.
Were we maybe going to have it in like our facilities sign up sheet? Like if, you know, if the Daisies go to Dow, which they do meet, I have no idea. Do they have access to a first aid kit? I don't know. I thought that was supposed to be in our facilities forms.
They usually bring, if you're using the facility, I can speak for AYF. We have our own supplies that we bring with us because it's our own, you know.
Yeah.
You would bring your own and.
Well, the nature of what you're doing is more.
Right, it's different.
It's susceptible to injury than hopefully a
Right.
Daisy meeting, but
You never know.
you never know. It's
Never know.
Daisies can get out of hand, but you know, I mean, things can happen, right? I mean, there's no,
It's our,
you know.
it's our, I don't know if it's like a Daisy meeting or something like that. I don't know that it's our.
We really have to be, you know, I think we have to be very careful about the administering of any kind of
encouraging-
something.
Or them requirement that they bring it. I'm not necessarily saying, I mean, I'm not saying they, you know, raid the nurse's closet for, you know, a suture kit, but we also have AEDs in the building too.
Septic
So
or something like that, you know, that would be in a first aid kit. I
Yeah.
think, you know.
I just think somehow this should be mandatory, whether they are forced to bring it or somebody's there and shows them where the first aid kit is.
I can certainly speak to the principals to remind their PTA folks to, you know, make sure that they have first aid equipment available.
Okay. Their event is the 28th, just FYI.
Of April.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
And which one is that first? One of us.
Wanamass is at the high school, yes. And it's a Friday, I think. Okay, and then my second old one is, so last meeting we discussed, you know, the, I don't want to say firings, I'm sorry, the letting go of staff due to budget. So have all the teachers who unfortunately we're going to have that happen to them, have they been notified? And or has anybody been notified of moves yet?
The majority, I believe, have. There are some that still have not because there are still a couple moving parts going on. And also, I believe the majority of people who are going to be transferred. So the answer is most have, but not all entirely.
And did we settle on 9 or 11?
Like I said, it's still moving because a lot will depend on. We've posted some positions, and depending on who gets those positions, it's possible we can get as low as 5. So I can't tell you exactly where it is right now because, like I said, there are a couple moving parts.
Okay.
That you know, by the May 9th meeting,
Everyone should know.
we should know. Yeah, I mean, everyone will definitely know. But there's still a possibility after that we may be even able to bring back some of those individuals depending on what happens. Yes.
Okay,
Any other old business?
that's it.
New business. I have a letter from the New Jersey School Board, so I won't share the whole letter, but just to inform you that New Jersey School Board of Directors unanimously approved their budget for 23-24 on March 24th. And that budget includes an increase in revenue and expenses versus the current budget. And so their ad hoc dues reassessment committee, made up of local board members, has decided to raise the dues. So in Ocean Township, the Board of Ed dues will be $27,195. Just thought I'd let everybody know that.
32 grand? Okay.
What was it before?
We appreciate your support. If you have questions, reach out. All of what New Jersey School Boards provides board members with.
Just to let everybody know, we're covered.
We're covered.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much.
They talked about
Increasing the dues.
increasing the dues prior to, I mean, I would have liked to have gotten it much sooner.
Yes, it was
But
a late letter.
I checked it today and we have
You're
enough
good.
money on the line.
Thank you. Mr. McCarthy?
What does that money go towards?
The convention?
What's the problem if we don't pay it?
Well, I mean,
You choose not
you
to.
sent their.
It's for the convention, is that what it is?
No, that's another thing. The New Jersey school boards, we use them, they provide counsel, we're a member there, we go to their sessions. You don't have to pay for classes if you're members. Attorneys if you need them for advisory opinions.
Mandated training.
Access to their
Yeah.
website.
So it's a bargain.
It's
That's a good racket. It's a good racket.
I know.
just to interject, there are something like 400 school boards or 400 districts out of the 520 that belong to NJ school boards. It's not all. When I was at their nominating committee meeting, yeah, not everybody does. You're not mandatory. And just to give some background, they used to have like 100 people on their staff a decade ago. New Jersey School Boards Association did. And they have like 24 now.
That's almost half its.
So they are increasing their staff. So, and they said that they would be raising rates, well, as everything's getting expensive. I thought it was mandatory. I thought everybody had to.
No.
Yeah, you don't think it would.
Small districts can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah, teacher position.
And my other new business is that this Thursday, there is International Night at the Ocean Township High School from 6 to 9. If you'd like to get some culture and some good food at the same time, you might want to attend International Night at the high school. Other new business. Mrs. Hayes?
A couple of things. The social worker community parent liaison that was on our new jobs for this week. Is that new? I don't recall seeing that title, like community parent liaison.
That's part of the preschool program.
Right.
Yes.
So we've never had that.
It is new and it's part of
Yes.
the preschool program.
And how is that different from a normal social worker?
Well, in some cases it's not, but it's just specific to preschool. And then there's a component of it that is a community outreach, out to parent outreach person.
So this person
We'll do both.
will have events and do community outreach more than we have ever had, is what the intent is.
Related to the preschool.
Only
Specific to
preschool,
preschool.
because it's in the preschool grant,
Correct.
and it's mandatory to have this?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And then I guess I had two other questions. So, and I brought this up, I don't think I got an answer back. When the Hackensack email went out to all people about the, what was it? They were giving out shots. Was it shots or, oh no, I'm sorry, the mental health teenager group. So when that came out, I was kind of like, this is awesome, but who is this from? What is it for? Like, there wasn't really any writing like attached to it. And then also, I mean, it also was not in any other language. So that could have been a difficulty for some of our students and parents, but also, and then when the assembly members and the senator came to the middle school And I even sent you an email, Dr. Stefanko, it's like, oh, that's awesome. I wish we had known that. Like, how do we, I just want to understand the communications behind these things. Like how does an assembly person come to one of our schools? And for example, like you didn't know about the assembly people coming into schools. I mean, that would have been.
Sometimes that was a situation where an individual teacher, reached out and invited.
Which is cool.
And, the word didn't filter up through the ranks in time to know about that. So, and there's things that have to get filled out, they can't just do it, you have to get permission, you have to, fill out, forms and what have you. But it didn't quite get all the way up to me, and that was a conversation that afterward, I had because, in that type of situation, we would want to have some folks there and want to make sure, ultimately it was about meeting with the kids and that was what was most important. And that's what happened. And that was good. But yeah, we would have certainly done a little bit more with that had we known. As far as the flyer, we get community flyers, that gets typically sent to our guidance folks. The community things we send out only on our general interest. And we try to get other languages there, but we're often not successful with that. And it goes out, and there is a little disclaimer when you sign up on the back for general interest of what it is and what you'll get and all that stuff. So that was, it was obviously something from Hackensack Meridian. It's and it's just making our community aware that there's these support groups out there for I guess it was teens and one was I think teens in general, and one was I think young girls, and it's just more of a for your information kind of thing.
Yeah, I hope we would just maybe ask or almost like have a policy, like if we're going to send it out in English.
Well, we typically ask, and sometimes people say they don't have it. Sometimes they say they do have it, but they don't have it right away. So then we say, okay, well, we'll send the one now, and then if we get the other one back, in this particular case, we did call them to find out more information. Actually, they actually told us we were prepared to send it out on a particular day. They told us, we're not going to have people manning the phones until day X. So can you wait to do day X? Part of this is, once again, it's a community service. It's, how many people hours do you want to put into all this of people who have other jobs that are actually related to what we're doing in the school. So, we do the best we can. If they comply, great. If they don't, they don't. But we get the information out there.
For those who can read English. Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's all I had.
Let's move to public comment. Would anyone from the public like to comment on any item at this time?
Okay.
Yes, President Gilman, we have two commenters. The first is Tiffany Fisher. Please go ahead.
Yes.
I have two things I want to say. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say is that the meeting that you guys had was 53 minutes late. I was waiting at the computer for 53 minutes. The meeting prior to that was 40 minutes late. Parents don't know that you're running late. Is there a way that you could set a timer or say, hey, we're running late, let parents know we're not going to be on for a while. I get that, what you have to say is important, but this is 2 hours now that I've been sitting on the computer waiting to speak, and I don't really think it's fair or considerate that we have to wait that long to say anything.
Yes, when our meetings, our private executive meetings run longer, we definitely need a way to inform people waiting in the wait room. Maybe through social media, if we could post something, but when we are in our executive meetings, we're involved there. So we really can't leave to comment, and all we can do is apologize because our meetings run long, but we have important things to discuss.
Could you appoint somebody to log on to say, hey, we're running late?
Ms. Fisher, this is Tina Truba. How are you doing tonight?
I'm tired, but
Me too. What we did was in executive session, we really watch, it's an executive session, so we really don't use cell phones, but when I know we're running late, I notify Miss Conway immediately and she posts it on Facebook. So tonight by 7:00 today, it was on Facebook that we were running late.
Running late. Thank you.
When I was waiting, it just said waiting to log in, waiting to log in. When you're on the screen, it doesn't say anything.
Now,
You're waiting to get onto the meeting.
we posted on social media. We posted on our Facebook page because that's where most people go to.
Oh, I don't know that.
Maybe we can figure out a way to do it on Zoom.
Listen, I'll take the feedback.
Yeah.
I'll take the
Speak with
feedback.
Ms. Conway.
Right. I'll speak with the IT organization and we'll get it out as much as we can.
Okay. And
Okay.
Yeah.
I also had I wanted to ask about, I wanted to talk about, I'm sorry, extended school year. So I heard that ESY is at Wayside this year. I got the paperwork, I sent it back, but nobody said why it's at Wayside this year. I'd like to know if it's going to continue to be at Wayside, if this is an ongoing thing, if it's just this year that's going to be at Wayside, because I have to figure out, where my other 2 kids are going to go in correlation now to Wayside School, who's going to be available to pick them up, if they're going to pick them up at Wayside, what time. I got to figure this out. I know it's early, but I have to figure it out now because I have to sign my kids up for camp. So can anyone tell me why it's at Wayside this year instead of Wanamassa, just so I know what's going on? And is that definite that it's going to be at Wayside?
There are certain projects going on within the school, rooms being moved for preschool accommodation, things like that are happening at Wanamassa that would prohibit us really from being able to do ESY at Wanamassa. So this coming year will be at Wayside, but it'll have to be determined moving forward whether it will go back to Wanamassa. But that's the main reason why we're moving it this year.
Okay.
anybody else? You said there were 2 people that needed for public comment, Ms. Conway?
Yes, the next commenter is Mike Riley. Please go ahead.
Mr. Riley?
I just have a question about the calendar and the snow days. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was it just said in the meeting that the union and Dr. Stefankovich had a discussion and that the union suggested in order that we would like the end of the year, Memorial Day and Juneteenth in that order?
No.
That's
literally. No. What I said was,
okay.
oh, I've been to say many times. What I said was that first and foremost, always people would prefer to end the school year early. That's first and foremost what we typically do. So when we do that, when we have a day to get back, that's the first thing that we look to do. I then said administrative, we talked about it administratively, and yes, we did talk with the association about it. And aside from the end of the year being the case, what would we prefer to do after that? And the thought was the next thing after that would be the Friday before Memorial Day weekend. And if we, obviously if we didn't do that, then another day that we could potentially look at would be Juneteenth, but we really, didn't get that far because it seemed pretty, if we're not doing the end of the year, the consensus was definitely to do the Friday before Memorial Day.
Okay, because I do want it to be clear that discussion was held, but the only recommendation or request that the union made, the TOEA made, was that it be the Friday before Memorial Day.
Mhm.
We had no say in the other days whatsoever. So if it was put to the union, which day would we prefer? Unanimously, we asked for the Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
All right, I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. All right, we never said anything about any kind of order. We never asked for the last day. We never even mentioned Juneteenth. All right, again, Friday before Memorial Day weekend is what we requested Because that would benefit the 12-month employees much more than cutting it off at the end of the school year.
Right. Well, that was, and if you recall, Mike, you know, that was something we brought forth to you guys and said, you know, one of the things that is if I said, if the board meeting, you know, when we met, if you recall, I said, look, we have a, you know, ideally, we'd always like to take her off the end of the year, but last year there's a board meeting. If we do that. So if we can't move the board meeting for some reason, you know, what direction do we want to go? And in the conversation, we absolutely discussed the Friday before Memorial Day. Did bring up Juneteenth in that meeting that we discussed. Absolutely, we did. And but the focus to absolutely both administratively and, you know, when you guys got back to us was definitely if we can't do the last day in June, if the board meeting doesn't move, that the focus would be the Friday of Memorial Day weekend. Yeah, if I suggested there was like a rank order, then that's not what I was trying to basically say. So we were kind of looking at it. It was the end of the year is always the first thing we look to do. And then we thought about the Friday before Memorial Day, and then we also talked about Juneteenth, and then but the Friday before Memorial Day, if not the end of June, the Friday before Memorial Day, absolutely was the consensus of both the administrative group and the association.
Okay, I remember it being asked flat out, which of the three options would we prefer? And unanimously, again, the TOEA asked for the Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
Okay.
So, but wouldn't it affect how we voted if we all thought that the union wanted the,
Well, again, the meeting, to union, and you know, I don't say this badly, it's a courtesy to discuss with the union that situation. We don't have to give any of these days back, quite frankly, right? So, you know, we take it all into consideration and make an administrative decision.
but I mean, would anybody's vote have changed about what you guys would rather have Memorial Day weekend 3 days?
But not.
It was actually it was actually the administration that brought forth to the association that when we take them off the end of the year, it is a little bit unfair to 12-month employees because while everyone else gets an extra day, the 12-month employees don't. However, many of the 12-month employees will say that everyone else leaving a day is not the worst thing in the world for 12-month employees either, you know. So, you know, it all balances out. But, you know, at the end of the day, after hearing, you know, that for our sound equipment people, that the 20th is actually a better day than the 21st, we weigh it all out. You know, as far as, you know, the association is concerned, we coordinate and ask their opinion. But at the end of the day, we make the decision administratively, just as we did for next year's calendar. You know, we talked with, you know, it was our intention to start before Labor Day next year. We talked to the association. They requested starting after, and so we started after. So, you know, there's things we agree upon. Sometimes we, you know, talk about it and we go in a different direction. You know, as far as 12-month employees are concerned, we're here. So, you know, whatever day we take off, it doesn't matter. Like I said, we don't have to give any of them back. So I think it's, you know, if we want to end early, great. If we, you know, if the consensus is we want 4-day weekend, take 4-day weekend. Doesn't matter.
Just turn around. Were there 2 unused snow days?
Yeah, but the
So
electrical outlet.
We have Dow Avenue who had to take a day. So we really changed both of those, you know. We actually discussed the idea of if we took 2 off all the schools and Dow would just come back for 1 more day. That was not popular.
Right.
Surprisingly.
By anyone. Right, I mean, so, you know, so, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that situation happened, but we could have done 2 days.
Yeah.
But just to do, you know, and as we said, you know, 100 is the minimum. It's okay to go 1 more, we have to.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs. Conway?
No, that was the last commenter, President Gilman.
Then I,
Oh, actually, Tiffany Fisher says she has something else to say.
okay,
Please go ahead, Tiffany Fisher.
Hi, I have a question. The conference, the in-service for the teachers, does that have to be in June, or could you do Juneteenth on that day and not have the in-service for the teachers that you always have in the beginning of June? Juneteenth is a federal holiday. It's not a state holiday, just so you guys know.
I think it's both, actually. What is the, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. What do you?
The conference that you have for the teachers, the in-service for the teachers that you always have in the beginning of June, could that be eliminated and Juneteenth be taken off in its place?
Can it be eliminated? No, I don't believe it can be eliminated.
Why? I don't, I mean, it's the end of June. You guys are saying that the problem is that it's too close to the end of the year and you have it in the beginning of June. I don't understand this every year.
Well, there's a lot of meaningful professional development that takes place on that day. It also, it also, over the years, it's been sort of backed up to the prom. So that's been part of it, but we do no longer have the
It's not prominent.
overnight
June.
program that we do, that used to do that. So, that can certainly all be looked at in future years, but as far as eliminating the PD, I wouldn't eliminate the PD day. When it takes place is certainly something that can be discussed and debated.
Okay. I'm done.
Thank you. If there are no further commenters, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Meeting over. Thank you.